it's Michele. Welcome to a special episode of Six Things More or Less. It's 2019. We're starting a new diet. We're starting a new exercise regimen. Well, here at Six Things More or Less, we're starting a new starter. And my friend Mike Skufca, one of the best bread and pastry chefs and also a professor at Johnson & Wales University in Miami, is here to help us do starter. Hey, Mike.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Happy New Year.
New Year.
Before we start our starter, I wanted to remind you to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Season 2 is starting very soon, and we want to be able to let you know when new episodes are coming up. What is a starter?
Okay, a starter is a natural form of yeast.
So is there any benefit to using a starter as opposed to using commercial yeast?
There are a lot of different dietary benefits to it. When you use a starter exclusively, what you're going to do is force the fermentation process to take a significantly longer time when you are making the bread rise or trying to get the bread to rise. And because of that, the enzymatic activity that is going on in the bread will change the proteins to make them actually more digestible. And also, the longer the fermentation process, the better the flavor is going to be.
Do you always use a starter?
I try to always use a starter. I use it for, depending on the kind of bread I'm working with, I occasionally will use commercial yeast. But I like to, even with commercial yeast, add some starter to it because it's just going to help with developing the flavor. Starters
are really hot right now. Some people are selling them. Well, they're not supposed to, by the way, sell them over the internet. But like, if I wanted to do like the famous sourdough bread in San Francisco and went up there and got somebody to sell me that,
you could only do that if you were in San Francisco.
Why?
Because yeast is in the air of the atmosphere. Just like wine has the terroir, yeast has the terroir for bread.
Wow, so if we make this starter here,
yes,
and my relatives from Wisconsin come here and eat my bread that I make with this starter, and they want to take some home, it's not going to be the same there?
It will not be the same. The bread that you make will be good, but it will not be the same as what you make here.
So this is really a great way to individualize something that only belongs to you.
Yes,
so
yes.
If I bake a bread with my starter and give it as a gift, it's sort of a one-of-a-kind thing because it's happening in my world.
Exactly.
Oh, I love
That's a
this.
good way
Let's
to
do
think about
this.
it. Yes. Okay. So to start a starter, there are different ways to do it. I think the easiest way is to start it with just a blend of a couple of different types of flour, a white flour and whole grain flour. In this case, we're going to be using a rye flour. Equal amounts by weight of each of those. I like, whenever possible, working with organic flours. Organic flours have no chemicals in them. People who have problems with gluten mostly have the problems with the chemicals that are in the fertilizers. So I'm going to go ahead and start this out. So as a commercial baker, we always work with just weight.
Why?
When I weigh 2 ounces, it will always be 2 ounces. If you weigh 2 ounces, it will always be 2 ounces. However, if I do a quarter cup and you do a quarter cup, the way we measure a quarter cup might be very different.
Okay.
So we will get different results and we may not be successful.
And it's really important in baking, right?
It's really important. Baking is really math and science. It's
You're
easier.
afraid of science and numbers. You bring in your friend who's a pastry chef to cook with you, to bake with you.
I'm going to work in grams because grams are a little more precise. First, when you get the scale set up, you want to hit the tare button.
Oh, so this won't weigh then?
This will not count as part of the weight.
Perfect.
And then I want to get into the correct mode, which is grams for us.
Okay.
So just hit it until it's grams. So we're going to start with 50 grams of rye flour and 50 grams of the bread flour.
Okay.
And it's pretty easy to weigh it all out. If you want to tear it out again, you may, or you have to just remember to add up. So I always say it's easier to tear it out.
So you don't have to do math.
So now what I'm going to do is, actually let's get some water.
Okay.
I'm going to go with 75 grams of water.
I love that you weigh water.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
you always think that you would just pour water into a cup.
Well, you can. Water is one of those few things that can actually be measured by weight or volume. I weigh everything. It's just so much easier. All right, so I have about 75 grams of water in, and then we're gonna go honey. Any kind of good raw honey, about 35 grams of honey. The important thing is to make sure that you incorporate all the ingredients together. You don't want any flour particles, dry particles, and it's going to have a little bit of an aroma. That's okay.
It has an aroma. Can I smell it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it does have an aroma.
Yeah.
It has like a rye aroma. Well,
Yeah, it's rye flour, but also the honey.
It's a
because
living thing, right?
Yes, yeast is a living thing, and whenever you're making bread, you're working with something that is alive and it's part of you. So when you're working with bread, you want to make sure you're in a good mood. So in return, the yeast will be in a good mood and give you a nice loaf of bread. Now what we're going to do is cover it with some cheesecloth.
Why cheesecloth?
Because we want the air to be able to get into it.
Okay.
But we don't want any creepy crawlies that might be anywhere to get it in. Yeah. So for the first week, it's really important to babysit it, just like you would a newborn.
Oh no,
So
I don't have
you need to feed it at a very regular schedule.
What does that mean?
That means tomorrow at about the same time, you're going to feed it more flour and more water. So tomorrow, your homework for tonight is going to be, you're going to have to scale out the ingredients, and tomorrow 100 or 50 grams more of the rye flour and the bread flour and 75 more grams of the water, and stir it in. Not do anything else except stir it in. And then on the next day, you're going to start removing some of the original starter and adding new flour in, because flour is the source of food for the yeast. And by about the third day, you're going to notice a little bit of bubbling going on. And every day you're going to notice more and more action, and it's going to start rising more and more, and it's going to rise up and then fall back down.
It sounds like this takes, what, 7 days from beginning?
From what we just did until the time it's ready to be used, 7 days, about a week.
Well, I can't wait to start.
Okay.
Thank you for
Happy
being
New
here.
Year.
Happy New Year.
And if you want to see what Mike can do with a bed sheet and a few apples, click the video.